On the surface, it seems like Jalen Hurts is better at not throwing interceptions than Patrick Mahomes. Hurts has thrown 6 picks this season. Even though he missed a few games due to injury, that's better than the 12 thrown by Mahomes. The less likely you are to throw a pick, the more likely you are to win the Super Bowl. Simple. However, it's not that simple. There's a huge random element in picks. Here, in this episode, I'm going to tell you a better way to predict interceptions than by simply looking at interceptions and what it means for the Super Bowl. Andy Reid and Carson Wentz will get a supporting role in this story. Let's get started. Back in the summer of 2020, we were all sitting there kind of wondering whether there was going to be any football at all in the fall. For me, it was time to reflect and dig into something at a more deep level. What would bettors want? I landed on predicting interceptions. Picks are notoriously difficult to predict. When you look at a quarterback's interception rate from one season and ask about its correlation to the next season, the correlation isn't very strong. Interception rate is not that predictive. I'll give more details on this later. That summer, what I found is that you need to look beyond picks. You need to also look at plays in which a defender gets a hand on the ball. This usually goes by a term known as passes defended. Luckily, all of this data is in the NFL play-by-play. For every incomplete pass, the play-by-play tracks when a defender either gets a hand on the ball, maybe either at the line of scrimmage or a defensive back before it gets to the receiver. And it also tracks plays in which a defender jars the ball loose from a receiver. These are the set of plays that I'm going to refer to as passes defended, and we can simply get this straight out of the NFL play-by-play. The quantity that I found was really useful is bad balls, and that's simply the sum of interceptions and passes defended. This is a situation in which the quarterback has put the ball in a dangerous situation. Sometimes the defender gets a hand on it and it falls harmlessly to the ground. Other times, the defender actually catches it, and that ends up as an interception. Let's consider bad ball rate. So this is for a quarterback, going to be bad balls divided by pass attempts. And when you look at bad ball rate for a quarterback from season to season, the R-squared value is 0.27. This means that a quarterback's bad ball rate from one season explains 27% of the variance in bad ball rate the next season. This is really good. Now, if you're a math type, you should be familiar with R-squared values and correlations and regression and so on. If any of this doesn't make sense to you, I have a visual primer about R-squared values on my site at the Power Rank. You can use the URL thepowerrank.us to go to a place on my site where you can get this visual primer. Once again, that's thepowerrank.us. Bad ball rate for a quarterback is predictive. Year to year, the R-squared value is 0.27. That is significantly more predictive than interception rate. For a quarterback's interception rate from season to season, the R-squared value is 0.07. But if you look at the number of bad balls that turn into picks, then we see a lot more randomness. To be a little bit more concrete, if you take interceptions and divide by bad balls, so the total of interceptions plus passes defended, and you look at this ratio for a quarterback from season to season, you essentially see zero correlation. It is pretty random. To understand this, let's use an example. Think back to the AFC Championship game between Cincinnati and Kansas City. With 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, the game was tied at 20. Joe Burrow steps back and launches the ball downfield towards T. Higgins. Kansas City defender Brian Cook has some pretty good coverage. He's able to get his hand on the ball and tips the ball into the air. This happens all the time in football. Sometimes the ball lands harmlessly on the ground. Other times it ends up in the hands of the defense. In this case, Kansas City's Joshua Williams caught the tipped pass for an interception. It was a critical play in a game that really could have gone to either team. This is where the randomness of picks comes from. Joe Burrow put the ball in a dangerous position. This is something that we can track for quarterbacks, and this is something that is predictive. Once he puts the ball in that dangerous position, it's random as to whether it ends up being an interception. This is the take-home message. We want to look at the rate at which quarterbacks put the ball in dangerous positions. We're going to do that through bad ball rate. Let's take a look at my first prediction based on this metric. Let's go back to the summer of 2020, and the quarterback that really stuck out in my analysis was Carson Wentz. Over the previous 3 seasons, he had a 1.5% interception rate. This was excellent compared to the NFL average of 2.4%. However, Wentz was much worse when we looked at bad ball rate. He had a bad ball rate of 10.7%. This was pretty close to the NFL average of 11.1% over these 3 years. This suggested that his sparkling pick rate was unsustainable. During the 2020 season, Wentz was terrible. He had an interception rate north of 5% before it finally settled to 3.4% for the season. Late in the season, he lost his job to Jalen Hurts, and that's a move that seems to have worked out pretty well for Philadelphia. My prediction was good in the sense that Wentz's interception rate regressed. It certainly went in the direction that I predicted. The prediction was bad because Wentz was actually supposed to be close to NFL average, not be one of the worst in the league when it came to interception rate. We can actually take a look at Carson Wentz over the past 3 seasons because it illustrates an important concept. In 2020, Wentz had a bad ball rate of 12.7%. This was worse than NFL average, and he had a correspondingly bad interception rate of 3.4%. Philadelphia offloaded him to Indianapolis in the offseason, and that's where he landed for the 2021 season. This year, he had almost the same bad ball rate, 12.3%. However, he was really good at not throwing picks. He had a 1.3% interception rate. Very good. The Colts weren't satisfied with Wentz. I don't know if they were looking at some of my work on bad ball rate or whether they just watched the guy play. Anyways, they didn't keep him. Wentz goes off to the Washington Commanders for this current 2022 season. His bad ball rate was 11.7%, so a touch better than what he had done the previous 2 seasons. However, his interception rate ballooned to 3.2%. Remember, Wentz lost his job during the season, and Washington ended up going with Taylor Heinicke. When Wentz recovered from his injury, he didn't automatically get his starting position back. The last 3 years shows the stability in bad ball rate, but the volatility in interception rate. Wentz's bad ball rate over the 3 seasons was pretty much steady. It was pretty close to NFL average. And as I argued before, bad ball rate is pretty predictive, so this shouldn't be surprising. However, look at his interception rate these last 3 seasons. 3.4%, 1.3%, 3.2%. Terrible, amazing, terrible. Let's use these metrics to evaluate the 2 quarterbacks that are going to play in the Super Bowl. At the beginning of the pod, I talked about their raw numbers in terms of interceptions, but to make an apples-to-apples comparison for the 2 quarterbacks, we really want to look at interception rate. This is going to account for the fact that Hurts was injured and overall threw fewer pass attempts. This season, Jalen Hurts has had a 1.2% interception rate. That is very, very good compared to the NFL rate of 2.3%. Patrick Mahomes hasn't been bad. He has had an interception rate of 1.7%. But, as I've argued, we want to dig a little bit deeper and look at bad ball rate. For Jalen Hurts, he has had a bad ball rate of 11.4% this season. And this is better than the NFL average of 12.3%. In his MVP caliber campaign, he has been better than average at not throwing picks. He has actually improved his bad ball rate from last season. In his first year as a starter in the 2021 season, it was 14.7%. Hurts is good, but it also suggests that his pick rate of 1.2% is unsustainable. In contrast, Patrick Mahomes has a bad ball rate of 8.4%. He is simply elite at not putting the ball in dangerous situations. He throws bad balls about a third less than NFL average. Mahomes is actually slacking a little bit this season. His bad ball rate in 2021 last year was 7.2%, so even better than the 8.4% from the current season. Mahomes was my second prediction in the original analysis on bad ball rate back in the summer of 2020. He was coming off of a Super Bowl appearance against the San Francisco 49ers. For a while in that game, he really didn't look good. He threw 2 interceptions, and neither were fluky. He was able to lead Kansas City to the Super Bowl win that season. When you looked at his bad ball rate over the last 3 seasons heading into the 2020 season, it was excellent. It was 7.4%, and that was significantly better than the 11.1% NFL average. Only Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers had a better bad ball rate. We have a large data set that shows the excellence of Mahomes in interception prevention. The jury is still out on Jalen Hurts because of small sample size. For the Super Bowl, my best numbers favor Kansas City, and certainly the bad ball rate analysis is not a part of that prediction. And what I've been telling you about in this podcast certainly supports the idea that Kansas City should win this game. Patrick Mahomes is really good at not throwing interceptions. Can we give him all of the credit? Maybe, maybe not. Let's actually look at Andy Reid, his coach at Kansas City. Reid first became an NFL coach in 1999 when he took over the head position in Philadelphia. He, for the last 24 years, has been a head coach in the NFL. If picks were random, you might expect some good years when his pick rate for his team is lower than NFL average, but also some bad years when the interception rate is higher than average. This really hasn't happened for Andy Reid. In only 3 of his 24 seasons did his team have a pick rate worse than NFL average. The first of these 3 seasons was in 1999, his first. He had a combination of veteran quarterback Doug Peterson, now the head coach of the Jags, and rookie Donovan McNabb. The second time that he had an interception rate worse than NFL average was 2005, and it was only slightly above NFL average. And the last time that Andy Reid's team had a bad interception rate was 2011. This was the only year in which it was really bad. The Eagles had a 4.5% interception rate compared to the NFL average of 2.9. Michael Vick and Vince Young were his quarterbacks. For every season since 2011, an Andy Reid team has been very good at preventing interceptions. Since 2011, Andy Reid has worked with quarterbacks Nick Foles, Alex Smith, and then, of course, Patrick Mahomes. He's done it with a number of different quarterbacks. Reid has always been good at interception prevention. The bad ball rates that we're seeing from Mahomes suggests that this will continue. I'm not exactly sure why Andy Reid has been so good at interception prevention. Reid is known for having good offensive schemes, and this certainly shows up in a lot of other passing metrics. Patrick Mahomes is obviously a great quarterback, but the data over the long term suggests that he has been really good. However, there is also data to suggest that coaching doesn't have much to do with interception rates. Bill Belichick became New England's coach in 2000. And On the surface, it seems like he has done even better than Andy Reid. New England had a better than average interception rate during his first 20 seasons. However, over the last 3 seasons, New England has had a worse than NFL average interception rate. I'm sure you can guess the reason, probably why this has happened. His name rhymes with Tom Brady. Tom Brady signed with Tampa Bay in 2020. Cam Newton took over the quarterback position. Josh McDaniels was his OC, and their interception rate was pretty bad. In 2021, Mac Jones was a rookie at the quarterback position, and Josh McDaniels was his OC. In 2022, Mac Jones was the quarterback, and his offensive coordinator was a ghost, essentially. New England hasn't been good at turnover prevention the last 3 seasons. In contrast, Tom Brady has played the last 3 seasons in Tampa Bay before finally announcing his retirement for the final time, right? In each of those 3 seasons, he has had a pick rate better than NFL average. Interestingly, though, he had his worst pick rate of 2% over the last 3 years during the 2020 season. This was the year in which he won the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. Is not throwing picks coaching or players? Probably some combination of both. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Analytics Show. My name is Ed Fang. I'm honored to be your host. You can support the podcast on Patreon. Patrons of the podcast had access to my data on bad ball rate before the conference championship games. In an audio episode only for patrons, I was lucky enough to have a winning bet on Joe Burrow to go over half an interception against Kansas City. If you become a patron, you will also get the audio edition of the Pick Report. This was my original research when I first looked at bad ball rate. While I summarize the results of that work here, there's a 30-minute episode that gives you the full story behind interceptions and bad ball rate. To support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/footballanalytics. Patreon is Patreon. Football Analytics is all one word. You could also stay in touch with my work through the Power Ranks Sports Betting newsletter. This is a free service that strives to be 3 things. 1, valuable. 2, concise. 3, entertaining. Every Saturday, I send out 7 Nugget Saturday, which is a curated list of sports betting tips and analytics. If you sign up, I'll also send you my top 5 sports betting podcast episodes, an education through your ears. To check that out, go to thepowerrank.com. That is my site for sports betting advice through data and analytics. Once again, that's thepowerrank.com. Once again, my name is Ed Fang, your host for the Football Analytics Show. Happy Super Bowl, and I'll talk to you again soon.